listening to Pop This, the podcast where three women talk about pop culture. Here are your hosts, Lisa Christiansen, Andrea Gin, and Andrea Warner.
So I'm going to perform at my first public event since before the pandemic. And I know, I feel weird and a little nervous, and it's not even it's going to be necessarily that crowded or anything, but
people's heads won't be on screens.
Yeah, it's so weird. I'm so used to doing, not that I've done a ton of stuff because I was really lucky that my last book came out in 2018. So by the time 2020 came and the pandemic stuff, I didn't have a ton of book related things that had to happen in the last 2.5 years. And I've been doing other stuff. And so I'm just really used to being on video and Zoom. And I've perfected in my own way from the shoulders up. But now I have to go be in person again, you guys, and people are gonna people are gonna be able to come up to me and we're gonna be sharing the same space, and I'm I intend to do my events masked, but I don't know if everyone else will be masked. I have no, and will that be weird? Will people be able to hear me? I don't know, but
I did an event in the fall, and I was the only person on the panel wearing a mask. And I just owned it,
Yeah. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm just I'm proud of myself.
Yeah.
I will shame everyone in that room. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, but I'm a little nervous. So,
are you going to be on stage with anyone else, or is it just you?
I'm being interviewed by the artistic director, I believe, of the festival, for one event. And then there's something that's happening, another event that I've agreed to do that there's a few of us in dialogue together. And then the following morning I have to teach 2 workshops. And wow. I know, right? And so one, I haven't taught in 8 years. It has been a while. So, fingers crossed all those people get their small amount of money's worth.
So the only thing I was going to mention is that, my husband, Joe, he teaches as well. But when he wears a mask when he teaches, it was hard for some people who rely on lip reading
of course,
to understand what's going on. And so he got a mask with a clear panel on front. Ooh. So you could still see his mouth moving. So
where did he get those?
I can ask.
Okay,
I'll
please
find out.
Ask Joe, report back to me. If I can get it tomorrow, I will before I go up. That's a great idea.
Have you planned your outfits?
I have loosely planned my outfits. So we are going to the interior of British Columbia for this event, and it's going to be 35 degrees all weekend. And I barely function past 27. So I am trying to go loose and casual and airy. If there's a breeze that I can conjure up underneath my dress, that's what I want. So
it'll be the only breeze in the interior of British Columbia.
Yeah, it's just a little tiny funnel of wind because of the fan that I try and balance between my legs while I'm walking. Jesus.
That's going to be a lot.
Ooh, is your event outdoors or is it indoors?
Well, so I believe the majority of my events are indoors, but there are a couple of outdoor events that I'm going to go to because it's an arts festival. And there's a few things happening. A friend of mine is going to be there with her, she's part of the production company putting on a play that night and stuff too. So that's kind of cool and fun. And anyway, so yeah, I have no idea.
I guess you'll just melt a little bit when you go outside.
Yep. That's that. Do either of you have any stay in cool tricks?
Well, I mean, just the wearing of the caftan is key. Yeah.
I'll be very caftan adjacent the whole weekend.
Yeah.
And then just find the shade. It makes...
Yeah. I think I'll probably bring, there's like these little ice neck packs apparently you can get. And we also bought a small portable cooler so that I can carry my own bag of ice to refill my ice water that I love to drink so much.
Oh, wow.
So I think we'll have like a bag of ice with us at all times as well.
So that will help.
Yeah.
That'll be good.
Popsicles are always useful.
Yeah. And like, I mean, it's like in wine country, so like rosé all day.
Wine popsicle?
Yes. Wine pops. That's exactly.
That would be just legendary if you just sat doing your reading, doing your event with a rosé wine popsicle.
Honestly, I like to imagine this life for me, so thank you.
I think that workshop would be amazing.
The 10 a.m. workshop, if I just start it with like wine pops for everyone, and then like
cool.
I would be so cool. Plus, I think it would pressure off. Like it would be like a real release valve for me. Okay, well you've both given me a lot to think about. I'm Andrea Warner.
I'm Andrea Gin.
I'm Kerry Clare.
So excited to have you, Kerry. Thank you
Welcome.
so much.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.
You are listening to Pop This. People who are listening will notice that our dear Lisa Christiansen is not with us. She is on vacation. Maybe she's just enjoying some tooth butter somewhere in Europe somewhere. But we're so excited to have Kerry Clare with us. We are also so excited to talk about Obvious Child. I had no idea that this movie came out so long ago. It does not feel this long ago, but when it said 2014, and people kept asking me, wait, you guys haven't done this on the podcast yet? And
I asked you that.
You asked me that. And I was like...
Yeah, I said, you guys haven't done this on the podcast yet.
Yeah, it was weird. You were just like, I take no ownership of this podcast. No, and then when I realized it came out in 2014, it made sense because we didn't start the podcast till 2015. And we've done a lot of anniversaries, but we've never done like a 1-year anniversary yet. So, so I'm so excited that you're here to join us. Kerry, let me read your bio so we can place you within the context of this conversation. Kerry Clare is a National Magazine Award-nominated writer, editor of The M Word, Conversations About Motherhood, and author of 2 novels, great novels, Mitzi Bites and Waiting for a Star to Fall. She teaches blogging at myblogschool.ca, is editor of the Canadian Books website, 49thshelf.com, and has been a blogger since the turn of the century at picklemethis.com.
The turn of the century.
21 years ago is now the turn of the century. Good Lord. Her next novel, Asking for a Friend, will be published by Doubleday Canada in August 2023. Congratulations. She had an abortion 20 years ago, started talking about it in 2014, and plans to shut up about it just as soon as abortion is destigmatized, with access assured for every single person everywhere who needs one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Kerry Clare. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
And I applaud that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you for giving me another place to talk about abortion because, you can never have enough of them.
There are never enough places to talk about abortion as healthcare and as a human right. Thank you.
Yeah. And as a part of a story, which is what I love about this movie.
Yeah. I forgot that this movie came out in 2014. I forgot that this movie was only 83 minutes long. I forgot so many things about it. The only thing that had really, truly stayed with me is that I remembered that I loved it and that I was very charmed by it and that it really made Jenny Slate like a star.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I I'm pretty sure I watched it back in 2014 around that, or, soon after it came out, but I didn't really remember any details about it at all, except that it was kind of, like Jenny Slate doing her comedy.
Yeah. Did you also
like a vehicle for her comedy kind of thing?
I honestly thought she wrote it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Well, she was in the short film that it was based on. So
yeah, but and so I understand her comedy has influenced it greatly.
Yeah.
But I was like, wait, she didn't write it? That's so weird to me.
Yeah.
Anyway, AG, do you want to read the background?
Sure. This is from Wiki. Obvious Child is a 2014 American romantic comedy drama film written and directed by Gillian Robespierre in her directorial debut and stars Jenny Slate, Jake Lacey, Gabby Hoffman, and David Cross. Obvious Child originated as a 2009 short film, which was written by Robespierre, Anna Bean, and Karen Main, and also starred Slate in the main role. By making the film, Robespierre hoped to remove the stigma surrounding abortion and to correct what she perceived as a misrepresentation of unplanned pregnancy in earlier films. She finished the feature-length script in 2012.
And I'll just very quickly, the synopsis. It's the shortest synopsis we've ever read on this podcast, which, makes me happy. The story follows Donna, a stand-up comedian who has a drunken one-night stand with a man named Max after breaking up with her boyfriend. She subsequently finds out she's pregnant and decides to have an abortion. That is the movie.
Yeah.
It is perfect. Kerry, did you see this when it came out in 2014? It's also interesting that that's the year you started talking about your abortion publicly.
Yeah, so I went to see it in the theater, and I don't go to that many movies, but I remember, I probably couldn't remember the title of the film for a while after, but it was the abortion rom-com, because there only is one. And the fact that there was an abortion rom-com was so interesting to me. So yeah, I went to see it, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, it was a great movie, and I watched it again this week with my daughter, which was she's 13, and I just think that this is a movie that I wish I could have watched when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
It would have informed me a lot more than the culture that I, took in myself at that age a lot. So it was a pleasure to go back to it.
Well, thinking about the only movie that I had seen, I was thinking about this when you were mentioning that you saw it with your daughter. And when I was 13, the only movies that I had seen that even had abortion as a subplot were Dirty Dancing, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and God, maybe that's it. Those are the two movies that I had seen. And those movies have very different depictions of abortion than Obvious Child. And this feels like, yeah, exactly the kind of movie you want to watch with young people who can conceive, because it's a wild ride out there, and particularly right now, I was so interested in the reviews at the time, partly how kind of self-congratulatory certain elements of the reviews were, which is well, I mean, it's been legal. It's been legal for forever, and it's still stigmatized. And so the radical element of this movie is that it is not a radical thing, and just the implosion in my brain given the events of the last couple months.
Absolutely. Yeah, a few parts of it were just reminded me of how impossible our current moment would have felt to me in 2014.
Yeah.
This movie does not see now coming. Or you know what? It does. But when I watched it, it just was such a different lens. So you said, 14 years ago, such a long, that it wasn't that long ago that it came out, but in other ways it feels like, ever since June 24th, which is when Roe versus Wade was overturned. I mean, it feels like that was such a huge leap into something pretty terrible.
Yeah, I mean, it's only 6 weeks, technically. We know how bad it already is for certain states and certain people in certain places. The fact that this movie is only 8 years old, and I think you're right. I don't think it does see it coming. It sees certain things coming because it makes an offhand joke about the climate emergency and it getting hotter every year. Or maybe it does see this coming because it knows that it is still having to be so vehemently destigmatized, and like that work is still needing to happen in public, and obviously continues to need to happen at every corner that we can.
There's also a reference to bird flu. That was
yes. There's a reference to bird flu too. Oh God, no.
Such an innocent time.
I guess this movie called The Future. What are we gonna do? Yeah. So, what did your 13-year-old think?
She really liked it. She really likes reading romantic comedies and Jenny Han books and things like that. And so she really enjoyed it. And we talk about abortion a lot around our house. So she was glad to sort of see her passion for romantic comedies and mine for abortion brought together in a beautiful way. It's a lovely marriage. And I wanted to say also that 2014 was when I started talking about abortion. My first book was an anthology of essays about motherhood. And my essay was about how everything I learned about my abortion, I learned when I actually had my first child. Like there were so many things about my first experience of pregnancy that I just didn't properly understand until years later. And so I wrote this essay about my abortion, and it's in this book. And one thing I loved about having written it and published it is that it was out there. And so I could not keep this a secret, especially from my kids. I really wanted my abortion to be something that was just part of our ordinary life, because it's how we got here. And so the book kind of was like this leap I took, and I was like, okay, I got to be brave now. Like they're gonna, presuming my kids ever want to read my books, but right? But it's out there, and so I have to take responsibility for it now. And I was so glad to sort of have that push to be brave and talk about it. And I think part of the reason I was so excited to go see the movie is before my abortion was a fundamental part of my identity. I was really hungry for ways to kind of acknowledge my experience. And so I would, if there was an abortion rom-com, I would go see it. But before I talked about it a lot, I wanted to acknowledge it. And so this movie was part of that. And I think also seeing someone so unabashedly talking about abortion in the movie, that's pretty inspiring. And I've probably brought a little bit of Donna forward into my life in the years since then.
Yeah, that's like a wonderful confluence of those two events happening in the same year, and does it bring you back to 2014 a little bit?
In some ways, and I thought about the Shout Your Abortion. I think that was a few years later.
Yeah, I think that was 2016 maybe.
Yeah, which was also like just such a watershed moment, I think, for people being unapologetic about our stories. And so I think this movie was a seed of things for me, and I'm sure it was for other people as well who saw it and wanted to be that unabashed and own their story the way that Donna does in this movie.
Did you find that the movie was sort of accurate, in its depiction of abortion compared to what your experience was?
It was this scene where they were all sitting in the room with the little booties on after the abortion. And I don't remember if I was wearing booties, but that, yes, completely. And the other thing I felt there were two other things the movie got so right, which is that abortion is not the plot. Abortion is, it's a spot on the road on the way to somewhere else. And I love that. And also that abortion is women's work. And that's a line from Heidi Julevitz's book, The Folded Clock. And she was just writing about the way that female friends played a part in each other's abortions, that your friend is who takes you to have an abortion, your best friend often. And the way that Gabby Hoffman's character, Nellie, counsels, who's also had an abortion. I also love that. There's a character in this movie who's had an abortion that isn't even remotely related to the plot, because Donna's best friend, Nellie, has had an abortion years before when she was a teenager. And so she is able to answer questions and sort of pass on her experience so that Donna is prepared for what's going to happen to her when she has an abortion, which turns out to not be such a big deal. So yeah, the fact that this is something that that women really help each other through this experience. I felt this movie was very true to that. And even that her mom is who she tells, and she and her mom are not very close, but her mom's response is, well, I had an abortion. And I think sometimes people don't tell those stories. And so abortion seems kind of far away and not an abstract. And then when people begin to talk, you realize that it's everywhere. So I think the movie got a lot of things right. And also how Donna doesn't waver. They're like, okay, you have other choices, or there's some question like that.
Yeah, like we have to present you with all the options.
Yeah, and she's like, no, like, I think it's one of those things when you know, and she does it. And I love that they don't have to have a conversation where like, oh, am I sure? In fact, they just make a really off-color joke because she's a stand-up comedian and she's going to perform, and her friend says, you're going to kill it. And she says, actually, I have an appointment tomorrow for that.
That made me laugh so hard.
Oh my God. The movie's really funny.
It's really funny.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I was really moved though by Donna's conversation with her mom. Like, I just thought, and I was also very chilled by it, frankly, because her mom is talking about having to have an abortion before it was legalized, and what that was like, and that
was what never occurred to me in 2014.
Yeah, that's the thing.
We would have thought that was ancient history.
Yeah. Yep. And I think like that was the most chilling part of the film for me, in a way that had not ever occurred to me in 2014 when I originally watched it. And I think also like a lot of our language around abortion has like really become more inclusive in 2022. That was another thing that kind of stuck out to me. Like, I also have made tons of jokes about like my vagina being related to like, conception and stuff. And like, I do appreciate how we've sort of like moved the conversation along to be like, people with periods, people who get pregnant, like I think having, and of course acknowledging, that it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of a lot of women doing that work. But like, there's people have always been able to get pregnant who may not identify as women. And I think like it's so interesting how much that can change in 7 years.
Yes.
And I really appreciate that, like that little perspective too, and I don't know, there was just so much about this movie that was so funny. And I didn't realize that like, until I read reviews after, I never thought of Donna as a character who might be unlikable. I was like, I get that, like, I get like that, it's not that all every character in a movie has to be likable, and unlikable women are some of my favorite characters. I just had never thought to myself of Donna being a character who might be perceived as unlikable until I was reading a bunch of reviews after. I was like,
and they didn't like her?
Well, people were saying that like Jenny Slate's performance makes her extremely winning, but like they were saying things like Vulture's David Edelstein was talking about how Donna is a measure of something vital in pop culture now. Women who are at last demanding the right to parade themselves before the world in all their whatever. There's a risk and a cost when an actress like Slate talks about her Anne Frank face and her flatulence, just as there's a risk when Amy Schumer has someone in a spy parody give her character the code name Butterface. Just as there's a risk when Lena Dunham says, "Here I am, all of me," male clowns have long gotten away with spinning their self-doubts into comedy gold. Now every Dunham or Schumer or an obvious child Slate moves the boundary posts. I honestly...
Yeah, I would say like those three women kind of normalized doing that now. And so it's something that we're used to seeing in movies. And that's why like in 2022, it might seem weird that you would think like, oh, that this character, why would people think this character is like shocking or unpleasant? Because that's, you know, I feel like it is a very normalized thing for people, for women to be able to, you know,
Be humans.
Be humans, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wait. Tell me more. Women
Right?
are humans?
I guess it's the parade that's interesting. Like they talk about parading themselves. And she gets up there on, like she's a comedian and she performs and her, it's sort of like the Nora Ephron, it's all material. Like her life is her material. And at the beginning of the film, she's been dumped by her boyfriend, who her amazing best friend assures her is a sociopath. She's Gabby Hoffman. She's a great best friend.
Incredible in this movie. I love her so much.
I love it.
She gets the standout monologue. I just love her.
It's so great. But part of her boyfriend's problem is that she keeps talking about them and their life in her act. And I think he has a real problem with that. And later on in the film, she talks about her abortion, and the person who she got pregnant with is in the audience. And I have feelings about Max. I kind of think of Max. He looks like if Ben Affleck and Matt Damon had a baby, it would be Max.
Absolutely.
He's just so bland, but he redeems himself for quite a few reasons that I think are profound from his blandness. But he never gives her a hard time about the fact that she has talked about their experience.
I appreciated that aspect of that character.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
And you know, she tried to talk to him. There's a whole, like, she spends a whole bunch of the movie phoning him and he doesn't call her back. And she tried to have an intimate conversation. And even when they got together, she tried. And sometimes talking to people face to face is hard. And sometimes standing up with a microphone is a lot less scary. And I think about that as someone who like uses a lot of my own personal life. You know, I process a lot of that in public. And I think you're saying we've come a long way since then, but I think that there are still people who have a really hard time with women for whom their lives are material. And so, yeah, I love that she managed to pull that off, and and he's wonderful in my eyes because he understood what was happening and he was okay with it.
Yeah, like I really like that the character, like the romantic interest character, was just someone who treated it like, you know, kind of not, it was just a thing that happened in life, and he was able to be supportive and offer to go with her. And, you know, it wasn't, it was just treated like a person just, you know, going about life.
Yeah. And, you know, that's really hard to do. I think that a lot of male partners of people who get pregnant and don't know what to do in that situation and are very helpless and hapless. There is a wonderful podcast called Aborsh by Rachel Cairns that I just love. And she talks about her own experience and how her partner was just like not showing up for her. And that resonated a lot with my experience. And so the fact that like he shows up with flowers, like, yes, that's a cliche, but he shows up. Like he really does. And he brings her something and acknowledges what she's going through and doesn't make it all about him. Like that's huge.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways in which this movie is a kind of like almost idealized instruction manual of like, and I appreciate that. Like I can imagine that like I can see almost in my head the producer notes of being like, there should be more tension. You should amp up the conflict. Like there should be a fight. There should be this, and this, and this. And like, for, Jillian and all the people on board to just be quietly insistent that this movie has like this radical belief in, a person's right to choose.
Yeah.
And, they give us some moments, not necessarily of doubt, but just of like Donna trying to like prepare herself for what's going to happen. It's never a question of like, do I want to go through with this? It's a question of like, well, what is this going to be? And I think a lot of people, when this movie came out, there was a lot of comparison to like Juno and Knocked Up and how those movies sort of like barely skated by the option of abortion and decided to just, sort of like turn away from that really quick. And, and they're allowed to make those movies. Those movies need to exist as well. But, then the sort of like the idea that Obvious Child kind of is holding a lot of weight on its shoulders, all things considered. Because, like, I can't really think of another abortion rom-com.
It's still the abortion rom-com.
The abortion rom-com.
We need more.
We do. We absolutely do. I mean, it's just like...
But it's also, like, it's such a subtle abortion rom-com.
Yes.
Which is surprising. And, like, if
what's
if I
the
was...
subtle part? Like the
Well, I just feel like it's a very quiet movie. Like, it's not... I don't know. It's a quiet, subtle story.
Yeah.
And they're not making it into like no one's hysterical, nothing wild happens. Like it's just
life.
Yeah, it's just life.
Well, and it's like one of the reviews was talking about like sort of the effective modesty of this film and like why that feels extra radical is that it's just normalizing everything. And no one, some of the reviews that I read, like they were trying to like, they were kind of like, some of the reviewers were a little bit telling on themselves. They were like, nobody tries to like say that Donna and Max are bad people for having a drunken one night stand and not figuring out how to use condoms. The reviewers just kept telling on themselves about like, what constitutes like who deserves an abortion, I guess. Like, I don't know what the mental math is.
Well,
that
the
people
deserving
are doing.
abortion is so a thing, right? Like,
Yeah.
and we hear that all the time, like the people in rape and incest and
They want to justify it. They want to have like a some kind of reason for it.
Yeah, and most people who have abortions just want to have an abortion. There's not some sad story behind it. I think that's radical that they tell that story, and that's unapologetic. Also, the fact of their one night stand. First of all, if there is a sex scene I have to watch with my child,
Thank God it was that one.
I love this one. It is so. I did think it was strange because I very much grew up on Paul Simon's Graceland. We had it on record, cassette, and CD, as the years went by.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember Rhythm of the Saints came out, and it just never caught on in the same way in my life, and I just think in the wider culture. And so I just think it's really strange that Rhythm of the Saints is the album that they put on when they they went home. And
yeah. That seems a little that seemed a little strange.
It was strange, but Max, because I think they were at his place, so Max, he's kind of edgy in an interesting way. But it's they danced around like.
Sorry, Max is edgy in an interesting way. That's like one of the funniest things I've ever heard described to Max. But you know what? We do see that Jake Lacey, who plays Max, has lots of edge. Like, he was so good in White Lotus, and he's...
Oh, wow. Yeah, I was going to bring that up, too. Like, I didn't know him at the time I first watched this movie. And then, recently we watched White Lotus, where he plays this terrifying
Really?
terrifying, awful person, and very threatening, very.
That's
And
fascinating. Okay, he
yeah,
has more range than maybe he's a really good actor. He's definitely playing Max here.
He also,
Yeah.
this is going to be very exciting to anybody who has also watched this movie, because it's creepy, and they've just turned it into a new movie, but Abducted in Plain Sight. Have either of you watched that on Netflix?
No.
no.
It is a wildly horrific true crime. It's so compelling. The woman who is the subject is interviewed for it, so at the very least, she survived the terrible things that happened to her. Anyway, Jake Lacy is playing the bad guy in this new limited series that's based on this Abducted in Plain Sight. And when let me tell you, what this man in real life did to this family is so wildly awful, beyond anything you could possibly ever imagine. You think that it's made up. Like, you're just like double checking facts every step of the way. So I'm not surprised that it is becoming a limited series. But Jake Lacy is exactly the guy that you want cast in that role. It's going to turn people's minds inside out.
Well, that's surprising to me because I don't know if I've seen him in anything else. And you have to be a really good actor to play Max and have me think that you are Ben Affleck and Matt Damon's baby, right? And then to go off and play a super, Jake Lacy gets a lot of credit.
He was great in White Lotus.
Yeah, he was. But that's the thing. His blandness in this movie is so specific and necessary to counter Donna, right? And he has to have just enough edge that you would believe that Donna would find him compelling and that he would find Donna equally compelling. But I think it's the moment when they're both peeing on the street and then he farts in her face and
then he gets his name, Pea Farter. So after she leaves his place, she doesn't see him for some time. But I mean, as happens in friendships, right? These figures in your life kind of take on their own persona. And between her and Gabby Hoffman, Nellie, he becomes known as Pea Farter. And I just love that.
Yeah, the only untrue moment to me of the entire film, okay, I guess there's two possibly slightly untrue moments to me in the entire film, is the extended dance sequence to Paul Simon's Obvious Child. Because I was just this seems like just something that people think happens when two people are going to drunkenly go home and hook up. I don't know. I think they get to the hookup a bit faster. But anyway. And then when it turns out that he is a former student of her mom's and, I mean, great. This is good because you need this sort of mom to be he's not your type because he wears deodorant. I love all the digs at the ex. It's no one liked this man, but she had been with him for 3 years. And he was a dirtbag. And her friend Karen, of course, Karen. Come on, Karen.
It was Kate.
Oh, Kate.
It was Kate. But I bet Karen's her middle name.
Karen probably is her middle name. You're right.
Yeah. Yes, I think him appearing at her mother's apartment was a bit far-fetched, but I think only 5 people live in New York, so
you know what, you're totally right. And in between Manhattan and Brooklyn, definitely only 5 people.
Well, and you know what? The one thing I love about that is that her mom says to her, he's a really good writer.
Yeah.
And I want to know that about him because I mean, Donna's brilliant. She is so smart and she's a really good writer. And so, maybe he is deserving of Donna.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think Gabe Liedman does a great job as one of her other best friends.
Yeah.
Richard Kind. It's so nice to see him as puppet dad.
Mm-hmm. And I wrote down the line, he says, creative energy sometimes comes from the lowest point in your life.
Yeah.
He says this to her when she's suffering, and I don't think he's wrong. And, that also gives her license to get up and own her story in public. All the people who love her are supporting her in her shamelessness. And I think that's wonderful.
Oh, the shamelessness. I love it. I had a question for you if and again, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but one of the things that I loved so much that I saw recently on Instagram was your cake to celebrate the 20th anniversary of your abortion. And I wondered if you wanted to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have never celebrated the anniversary of my abortion before. I didn't even know exactly when it was, but Roe versus Wade was overturned on my birthday,
That
which
is
is
not cool.
just, I was already kind of in a funk, and my husband was working really hard to make sure I had a nice day.
Mhm.
And he'd sort of gone out of his way, and it was about 10 a.m. And then he saw the news,
Oh,
and he was
no.
like, oh, he was more devastated than I am, because he knew
Yeah.
he had not factored the Supreme Court into it. And so, yeah, that was my birthday. And I had also, I was finishing my newest novel, which I write a lot about abortion in the novel, and a lot of it is steeped in my own experience, some of it. And so I was reading my old diaries from the summer that I had an abortion, and which was so surprising, by the way. And there was shamelessness there too, and I was just so angry that this had happened to me. That was like the overwhelming feeling, how unfair it was to have sort of had my dreams derailed. So anyway, I looked up the date in my diary and decided, you know what, I'm going to have like Clarence Thomas, F you.
Yeah.
I am going to celebrate the 20th anniversary of my abortion. And so I invited some friends over, and I got a funfetti cake, and I was so happy to celebrate that, because the last 20 years of my life have brought me really wonderful things. And, you know, Lindy West talks about her abortion as a sort of a pivot in her life when she began to own her own story and become a proper adult. And that resonates with me so deeply. And so I'm just celebrating everything good that's happened to me in the year since I had an abortion. And it was a really wonderful party. And there was leftover cake, and I ate it for a week. So
That's always the best.
it was great. So yeah, it was just, you know, there's a lot of darkness right now, but I wanted to make some joy. And I did. And that was really nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved the whole concept. I loved witnessing in like from so far away, like you're in Toronto and I'm here, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so great. Like I really like, I'm just so glad that this is happening. And
Thank you.
yeah.
No, that means a lot. And I think, you know, there are other people who aren't as comfortable, you know, standing in front of a crowd of people and telling the story about their abortion, but who maybe because of things like Shout Your Abortion and this movie, and maybe seeing my funfetti cake, like maybe they'll tell their best friend, or maybe they'll tell their child that they had an abortion. And I think even more important than having those public conversations about abortion, which everyone can have. But it's that you have real face-to-face conversations with the people in your world, so that they know that people who have abortions are not some abstract, faraway idea, that they're the people that you love. They're the people that are very much woven into the fabric of everyday life. There's a lot of us. And so, you know, for everyone who's talking about it, there's lots of people who are talking about it quietly. And I think all of the different conversations are essential. And I'm so glad that they're happening.
Me too. And I really, I really appreciate this, like, just this idea that, you know, we've said for so long that talking about it is important, and sometimes you forget how important it is. And we can't take that for granted, obviously.
Well, and for people like Donna in the movie, and for me, our abortions are very easy things to talk about too. And I think that I talk about abortion on behalf of people for whom the stories are also really painful. People who had wanted children that, you know, for reasons, all kinds of reasons, these things don't work out. And that's brutal. And that's why, you know, I think the anti-abortion movement and what's happening in America is so profoundly cruel, because it's not just like people like me and people who can make jokes about it. Like this is just the most intimate, painful part of some people's lives. And the people who are making these laws have no understanding of the stakes and what they're doing. There's so much texture to this. And, the obvious child is a wonderful, fun part of that texture. And I'm super glad it's there. But yeah, there's a whole bunch else more too.
Yeah. That's actually one of the things that I noticed is very subtle. But when Donna tells her mom, and her mom is like, "Oh, I can't believe I've never told you this story before." And just the like, just the sort of like casualness with how she sort of embarks on her own story. And then Donna's like, "Oh, I thought you'd be really mad at me." And her mom's like, "No, like nah, like basically like, yeah, this is fully normal. And I'm so sorry you thought that like I would be mad, and it's, again, an idealized how-to manual for every person around you in this situation. Yes, but I just really love this movie.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Well, Kerry, I was going to ask you, because you mentioned rereading your diaries and writing your book. Can you tell us a little bit about your novel and what it's about?
My new novel is about two women who meet in a dorm room in winter 1998, and one of them is pregnant, and the other is a little bit older and has sort of been there before. And they meet, and they're there for each other, and their lives become entwined for the next, well, forever, but the book shows the next 20 years. And it's about the way that experiences of getting pregnant and not getting pregnant and abortion and all of the mess of being a person with a uterus can bring friends together and also, push them apart and make a lot of distance. And so it's about that very kind of tricky navigation as people make their way through years of friendship.
That's great.
Nice.
I can't wait.
And it's called Asking for a Friend?
Yes.
And it's coming out next year?
It's coming out in August from Doubleday Canada. We are writing the cover copy or the copy right now for the book
fun.
description. So it's very top of my mind.
Oh, that's going to be so great. Well,
Thank
1 year
you.
out, and
you can bring it to the beach.
Yeah. What an exciting time. This is our sort of question that we ask always. Does Obvious Child pop?
Yes.
Yes, I think it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When I had the option of buying it for $9.99 and I only rented it for $4.99, and I immediately regretted it because that is a zippy 83 minutes.
And it's a comfort film. It's a movie I would watch if I was sick.
Me too. Yeah.
I'll buy it next time.
Next time. We also love to leave our episodes on something we recommend. So, Kerry, as our guest, would you like to go first and tell us what you recommend?
Yes. So the first thing, I mentioned it, the Aborsh podcast by Rachel Cairns. There's 8 episodes. It's wonderful. It's about abortion access in Canada, and it's terrific. And I want to also recommend a book because I'm a book person, and the book I'm recommending is What Storm, What Thunder by Miriam Chauncey, who's a Haitian-Canadian writer. It's set against the Haitian earthquake in 2010. I read it last month, and I think it might be one of the best books I have ever read.
Wow.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
That sounds great. I can't wait.
How about you?
Oh, my recommendation? Thanks for asking. I am listening. So I'm doing some new book research. I've already talked about one new book I read for this new book research. Now I'm listening to Patrick Swayze and Lisa Niemi read The Time of My Life, their sort of co-authored memoir that he wrote after he was diagnosed with cancer. And it's really wonderful, actually, to hear him and Lisa, sort of go back and forth. And I'm up to the Dirty Dancing chapter, which is where I've stopped because, my new book is one of my new books is about Dirty Dancing. I'm in research mode right now. So I've just had to pause because I can't take in the information at this moment until after the weekend. But anyway, I'm really enjoying it, and it's really lovely to hear Patrick read and hear him like read in very much authentically his own voice, and to understand how he did some like shifts for his characters, and to hear him talk about his life and like complicated like growing up in Texas and how his family was like the weird arty family and what it meant to be like a tender man and like grow up with a tender man, and anyway, as a dad, and just there's like a lot of sort of interesting.
His life was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Like I think did he write more than one memoir?
I don't know. I don't know. He might have, but this one is specific to like after he was diagnosed with cancer.
Because I read a memoir by him, and it was great. But also he was about like he was a dancer and everything. And then he was a football player, right? And then he just everything he did, he was amazing at.
He like basically also did like dance capades, and he was a champion roller skate dancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool.
This man had moves, and like he was gonna go to the Olympics and then got an injury. So, yeah. Anyway,
And then just became a movie star.
Yeah, like
as a backup.
like he's barely made it to Hollywood, and we're already 4 chapters in. So it's wild.
Such a good book.
I'm really enjoying it. And I don't know if he has a second memoir or not, or maybe it's the same. And I'm listening to audiobooks, so I'm like, it's just nice to like hear him read it, and then have his wife's like sort of information in there as well, because like they really did spend like 30 years together. So anyway, AG, what about you? What do you recommend?
I want to recommend a TV series called Pachinko on Apple Plus.
Oh yeah,
It's based on a novel that I recommended a long time ago by
I
Min
love
Jin
that
Lee.
novel.
Yeah, it's a Korean family saga that kind of goes between Korea, Japan, and the United States. And it was actually filmed in Steveston. And so it's kind of like interesting for Vancouverites to look at that and see how they made, like, you know, you can see sort of how Steveston can be transformed to look like 1915 sort of Japanese occupied Korea.
amazing.
You know, with like the fishing village and everything. And it stars Lee Min-ho, who is a famous Korean actor and caused a huge furor when he came to film here. But yeah, it's just a very moving, like they did a really good job of turning the book into this TV series. And I don't think it's been getting the amount of attention it deserves. It's very moving, and it's like this. They really managed to sort of get the epicness of the novel in the TV series. So
That's
I highly
awesome.
recommend it.
So good.
I'm very excited about that. Well, Kerry, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us and telling us so much stuff and talking about Obvious Child and your books and your abortion. It's been great. Really,
Thank you.
Yes,
I've had a
thank
really
you.
nice time.
Thank you. Do you want people to be able to find you like online?
Sure. I'm on Instagram at Kerry Reads, and my blog is picklemethis.com.
Perfect. You can hang out with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And usually this is where Lisa would say thank you to Andrea Gin, who produces and co-hosts with us. And so tonight I will also say that. Thanks, AG, for co-hosting and producing this little baby beast.
I like that name for it. Baby Beast.
Well, it's because I make you work so hard. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening.